From disaster to done. The East Texas Restoration Report. From disaster to done.
I want you to just try to picture the immediate aftermath of a severe weather event. Put yourself right in the middle of that.
Oh, yeah. It's a highly specific, very disorienting landscape to be in.
Exactly. Like the wind has finally stopped howling, the rain has passed, but the geography of your own neighborhood is completely unrecognizable.
Yeah, you're stepping out of your front door onto a lawn that's just littered with heavy tree branches, shingles, maybe even sections of siding.
Right. And down the street, there's a power line draped across a driveway. And the overriding sensation in that exact moment is just this profound, heavy urgency.
The adrenaline is absolutely spiking.
Oh, completely. You are standing there staring at a gaping hole in your roof. Water has already compromised your attic, and your cognitive load is just maxed out.
You are in a state of acute vulnerability, which is, a very dangerous place for a consumer to be.
It is, because then almost systematically, the void of that quiet, wrecked neighborhood is filled with the rumble of diesel engines.
It happens so fast.
Within hours, your street is lined with out-of-town service trucks, temporary yard signs are going up, and guys with clipboards are knocking on your door.
Yeah, it's a highly predictable sequence of events, really. You're describing a microeconomy that springs to life literally overnight.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. The anxiety regarding property loss is overwhelming, and suddenly your physical space is saturated with this immediate, localized supply for an immense demand.
Solutions are quite literally idling at the end of your driveway, promising to halt the damage right then and there.
And that dynamic is exactly what puts you, the homeowner, in such a precarious position.
Because when you are standing in the physical wreckage of your property, your decision-making processes are totally compromised by panic.
Exactly. So how do you separate a genuine lifeline, a contractor who is actually going to restore your home from, an opportunist?
Right. Someone who is simply capitalizing on a localized influx of insurance capital. That's the big question.
It is.
So, in today's deep dive, we're extracting the core insights from the foundation of local accountability framework. Specifically, we're looking at an excerpt from episode 10 to answer exactly that question.
Yeah, we are unpacking a really critical operational dichotomy in the recovery industry here.
We are the transient labor model versus the local response, and we're going to break this down for you so it actually makes sense.
And we should clarify, we are not just analyzing the logistics of, how debris gets cleared or how a tarp gets secured.
Right, it's way deeper than that.
Much deeper. We are fundamentally examining the architecture of consumer protection. We're looking at the underlying economic and social mechanics of trust.
How long-term support is guaranteed in an industry where the quality of the product, the actual repair, is mostly invisible to the untrained eye.
Until it fails, yes.
Exactly, until it fails.
Yeah.
So let's break down the taxonomy of these two different approaches.
Let's do it.
The framework establishes this really stark contrast right at the outset between what it terms the storm chaser and the local responder.
And it frames this not just as a difference in a mailing address, right? It's a completely different philosophical approach to disaster recovery entirely.
So let's talk about the storm chaser first. What defines that model?
Well, the defining characteristic of the transient labor model, the storm chaser, is velocity. Their entire business model is predicated on rapid deployment.
Just getting to the disaster zones as fast as humanly possible.
Exactly. Getting to those high-yield zones, capturing as much immediate market share as possible while panic is high, and then, exiting.
Leaving the market once the acute phase concludes.
Right. Because insurance adjusters are operating quickly, money is flowing, and they want to capture that and move on.
And if we look at the defining characteristics of a local response, which the framework identifies as long-term support and community presence,
right,
the migratory model is just...
It's structurally the antithesis of that. They're transient by design.
Okay, wait, I have to push back here for a second. Let's look at the reality of a crisis timeline.
Okay, sure.
If water is actively destroying my drywall, isn't speed, that velocity you just mentioned, isn't that the ultimate metric of success?
That is the instinct, yes.
Right. Why does the framework seem to inherently caution against the migratory contractor if they're the ones agile enough to have 50 trucks in my zip code within 12 hours of a hurricane?
Because you're conflating arrival with response.
Okay, unpack that for me. Because in an acute trauma scenario, Arrival matters more than anything else to me.
You are touching on the central paradox of disaster recovery here. Let's borrow an analogy from medicine to clarify this.
Okay, I like analogies.
Think about why prioritizing speed over structure is dangerous. If you are in a catastrophic car accident, you are taken to a trauma ward.
Right.
The emergency room physicians there are highly specialized in acute stabilization. They stop the bleeding, they restore your airway, they stabilize your vitals.
Which is exactly what I want. That's the rapid arrival.
Yes, that is rapid arrival, and it's vital. However, imagine if that trauma surgeon resets your shattered femur, puts a cast on it, and then instantly relocates to another continent.
Wow, okay.
Without leaving any medical records, without physical therapy referrals, or any follow-up infrastructure whatsoever.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare.
Exactly. That initial intervention, no matter how incredibly fast it was, becomes a massive long-term liability for you.
Because if the bone starts healing incorrectly, or if a post-operative infection sets in 3 weeks later, I have absolutely no recourse.
None. You are left managing a complex failure without the architect of the initial intervention.
I am stuck with the results, but the doctor is gone. That makes total sense.
And that is the operational reality of the transient contractor model. They perform the surgery on your house, so to speak.
They rip off the damaged materials, install the new roof, collect the insurance disbursement, and then
They physically migrate to the next weather event in a totally different state.
leaving you completely on your own.
Right. And the framework states this explicitly. There's a great quote here. Response is not just arrival, it is follow-through.
Response is not just arrival, it is follow-through. I love that.
Because arrival is simply the act of being present at the point of peak demand.
Right, it requires logistical agility to get there quickly.
Sure, but it requires zero underlying commitment to the actual long-term outcome.
So the real danger lies in the homeowner conflating that acute stabilization with a comprehensive cure. Like a tarp on a roof is a bandage.
It is a bandage, but often these transient teams aren't just putting up tarps.
Right, they're not just stopping the bleeding. They are signing contracts for the permanent rebuilds.
Exactly. They are executing the full roof replacement, which is where the concept of follow-through becomes a truly critical metric of consumer safety.
Because in construction, the integrity of a repair is rarely apparent on the day of completion.
Almost never. A roof that is missing critical flashing or underlayment will look identical from the street to a roof that was installed with meticulous adherence to code.
Right, the shingles on top look the same either way.
Exactly. The failure will only manifest 6 months later during the first heavy spring rain.
Oh man, yeah.
And if the contractor's profit model relies on moving their fleet to a hailstorm 3 starts away, the cost of returning to your property to fix that localized failure,
It's financially prohibitive for them.
it is. Their profit and loss structure simply doesn't allow for warranty work across a dispersed multi-state footprint.
It structurally prohibits it.
Yes. Therefore, framing arrival as the entirety of the response leaves you, the consumer, holding all the latent risk.
The framework deliberately differentiates these two models because one absorbs long-term risk and the other transfers it entirely back to the homeowner.
Precisely.
Okay, that definitely clarifies the philosophical difference for me. We're looking at a velocity-based profit model versus a sustained presence model.
Right.
But I want to know how a local provider actually operationalizes that presence. Like, it's easy to just claim you offer follow-through.
Talk is cheap, yeah.
Exactly. What are the actual mechanisms that enforce it? Because the framework outlines 3 specific structural pillars that guarantee accountability.
It does. And the first of those pillars is licensing.
Licensing. Okay. And we need to look beyond the idea of a license as just like a bureaucratic hurdle or a permission slip from the city, right?
Definitely. A municipal or state license is actually a really powerful jurisdictional lever.
A jurisdictional lever. I like that phrasing.
When a contractor operates within their home market, obtaining and maintaining that license is literally the foundational requirement for their economic survival.
Because if they don't have it, they can't work.
Exactly. It binds them to the specific building codes, the environmental requirements, and the regulatory oversight of that exact geography.
Let's pull the thread on that oversight for a second. Because a migratory contractor often operates under temporary emergency provisions after a major storm.
Right, or they might even piggyback on some local entity's credentials to get around it.
Yeah. So if a fully licensed local contractor does a terrible job, what is the actual mechanism of penalty compared to a transient crew?
Well, if a locally licensed provider consistently fails municipal inspections or If they generate a high volume of formal complaints to the local housing authority,
They face consequences.
catastrophic business consequences, the regulatory board can suspend or completely revoke their license.
And once that happens, it's a domino effect, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Their liability insurance becomes invalid, their surety bonds can be called in, and their access to wholesale material supply chains can just be frozen.
Wow. So the local contractor has immense skin in the game.
They are tethered to the consequences of their labor in a very real financial way.
They essentially have this multi-layered economic hostage situation tied to their local performance.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
But the transient workforce avoids this entirely.
Because they just leave.
Right. A migratory contractor who leaves the state once the work dries up functionally escapes that jurisdictional leverage.
A municipal board in Florida has very little practical ability to penalize a contractor who has already relocated their entire operation to Texas.
The regulatory threat is localized, so if the contractor isn't localized, the threat just evaporates.
Okay, so the license is our legal tether. It enforces a baseline of operational compliance.
Yes.
But legal accountability is slow,
Yeah.
and it usually requires the homeowner to initiate, like, really complex complaints, right?
It can be a burdensome process, yeah.
So what prevents a local contractor from just doing the bare minimum required to pass an inspection and nothing more?
And that brings us to the second pillar the framework identifies, community presence.
Community presence. So this shifts us from legal mechanics into what we could call reputational economies.
Exactly. We are moving into the realm of localized social friction.
I love that term, social friction.
It's powerful. Community presence is the physical and social reality of existing within the same habitat as your consumer base over an extended period of time.
Right, so it means the owners and the employees of the local response firm participate in the civic life of the area.
Yeah, they sponsor local events, their kids attend the regional schools, and their primary economic engine is local word of mouth.
Consider the psychological weight of that proximity for a second.
It's heavy.
Like if I own a local roofing company and I botch the repair on your house and then I refuse to honor the warranty, the consequences for me aren't just a bad online review.
No, not at all.
I have to live with the reality that I might run into at the grocery store.
Or the hardware store, yeah.
Or that my neighbors might hear about my shady business practices at a community council meeting.
Right. The social friction of delivering a poor product to your own neighbors is an incredibly potent behavioral modifier.
It is the ultimate mitigator of moral hazard.
Yes, moral hazard. Let's define that quickly. In economics, moral hazard occurs when someone is incentivized to take risks because they don't bear the full consequences of that risk.
Right, they get the upside, but none of the downside.
Exactly. The transient model is highly susceptible to moral hazard. They can cut corners on materials or labor because they simply won't be around when the structure actually fails.
But for the local provider, their reputation is their primary capital asset.
It's everything. A migratory fleet relies on massive, short-term marketing spends, door-to-door blitzes, saturation advertising, just to acquire customers quickly.
Just burning through marketing dollars.
Right. But a local provider relies on a slow-burn accumulation of trust and referrals. Destroying that localized trust is equivalent to bankrupting their future pipeline of work.
It's a geographical barrier to bad behavior. You literally cannot afford to burn bridges in a town where you have to cross those exact same bridges every single day to survive.
That's perfectly said.
Yeah.
Which leads directly into the third pillar.
Okay, so we have the legal leash of licensing, we have the social pressure of community presence. What's the third?
The operational reality that connects them both. Follow-up service.
Follow-up service. So this is where the theoretical concepts of accountability become actually tangible for you, the homeowner.
Right. Because in the actuarial reality of construction and home repair, things will eventually fail.
They always do.
Always. A certain percentage of manufactured shingles will just have factory defects.
Whoa.
Structural lumber will warp as it dries, which causes drywall seams to crack.
Right. Even the most competent, highly ethical contractor in the world is going to have projects that require some sort of adjustment after the initial completion.
Absolutely. The expectation of perfection on day one is a myth. The real metric of quality is how the provider responds on day 300 when the anomaly occurs.
Yes, when that weird leak shows up 10 months later.
Exactly. Which is why a sustainable local business amortizes the cost of warranty work into their long-term operational budget.
They actually plan for it financially.
They have to. They anticipate that a certain percentage of their revenue must be allocated to deploying crews for follow-up service down the road.
They maintain a physical office, a stable phone number, and a localized fleet specifically to manage this long-tail responsibility.
Because it is built into their financial DNA. Their reputational survival depends on it entirely.
Now, contrast that with the velocity-based profit model of the migratory contractor we talked about.
Oh, it's night and day.
If their entire margin relies on securing a contract, executing the build in 2 days, and immediately moving the crew to the next zip code.
Deploying a truck backwards across 3 state lines to fix your leaky skylight destroys their profitability for that job.
It ruins the math for them.
It's a logistical impossibility for them to offer genuine follow-up service without bleeding capital.
Therefore, their operational strategy is often just to sever communication.
Sadly, yes.
Ow.
The temporary local phone numbers are disconnected, the emails suddenly go unanswered.
And you, the homeowner, are left standing there with a piece of paper that says 10-year warranty.
But a warranty is entirely useless if the entity backing it no longer exists in your geographic reality.
Wow. Okay, so those 3 pillars, licensing, community presence, and follow-up service, they create an incredibly robust ecosystem of consumer protection.
They really do. They aren't just, bullet points on a marketing brochure.
No, they're overlapping systems of legal, social, and financial leverage that force the provider to act in your best interest over a very long timeline.
And understanding those mechanisms completely changes how a consumer should evaluate their options in that chaotic post-storm environment.
It shifts the entire priority.
It really does. It shifts the priority from who can get here tomorrow to who is structurally obligated to be here next year.
Who's structurally obligated to be here next year. That is the key phrase.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the psychological core of the framework.
Yes, the big one, trust.
We are ultimately talking about the currency of trust. In a crisis, when your property is heavily damaged and your daily routines are just shattered, you desperately want to trust the first person who tells you they have a solution.
It's human nature. You want the pain to stop.
Right. But the framework introduces a really significant paradigm shift here. It says, trust should not be a prerequisite for doing business. Trust is an outcome.
That is such a vital distinction. The migratory model relies heavily on the phenomenon of unearned trust.
Unearned trust.
Yes.
Well, see.
They leverage the cognitive overload of the homeowner. When people are exhausted and traumatized by property loss, they just lack the bandwidth to conduct rigorous due diligence.
They're not thinking straight when water is dripping onto your dining room table.
Exactly. So the opportunistic contractor uses high-pressure sales tactics or promises of waived deductibles or just sheer speed to extract trust up front.
They bypass the normal vetting process completely.
Right.
They basically demand trust based on a firm handshake and a branded polo shirt.
Exactly. Whereas the local response model, as defined by this framework, doesn't require you to rely on blind faith at all.
You don't have to guess at the moral character of the contractor.
No, because the structural accountability we just discussed, the municipal licensing, the verifiable local history, the physical brick-and-mortar office, it creates a safe environment where trust is demonstrated rather than demanded.
The trust is earned chronologically.
Yes, through the execution of follow-up service and the long-term maintenance of a community reputation.
The framework summarizes this dynamic in what it calls the primary insight, which is local relationships create long-term accountability.
It's a self-reinforcing causal loop.
A continuous feedback cycle.
Right. The presence of the provider in the community necessitates a baseline of accountability. And then that accountability, proven over multiple projects and subsequent follow-up service, deepens the local relationship.
And as that relationship, that reputational capital we talked about, grows stronger, the provider is even more highly incentivized to remain accountable to protect it.
It is an upward spiral of reliability.
An upward spiral. And it is a loop that the transient model is physically locked out of.
They can't access it.
They cannot generate the friction required to start the cycle because they lack the core variable, which is time spent in a shared geographic space.
Exactly. You can mimic a rival, you can mimic a slick sales presentation, but you absolutely cannot mimic a 10-year history of local operations.
You can't fake time.
No, you can't, which culminates in the final, probably most resonant principle of the document.
Ah, yes. The quote, "Who is there after the storm matters."
It's so simple but so profound, and the analytical weight of that statement hinges entirely on how we define the word after.
The duality of that word is fascinating to me.
Right.
Because there are 2 totally distinct phases of after in disaster recovery. There's the acute after, like the immediate 72 hours following the event.
The loud phase.
Yes, the
Yeah.
phase characterized by sirens, blue tarps, insurance adjusters, and just a massive influx of external energy.
And the migratory contractors are absolutely present in this first after.
They dominated. Their entire logistical apparatus is built to maximize their footprint in that specific narrow window of time.
But then there is the second after, the chronic phase.
The subsequent months and years.
Yes. It is the period where the external energy dissipates, the news cycles move on to the next disaster, the out-of-town fleets pack up and depart, and the community is left to actually live inside the rebuilt infrastructure.
The long tail after.
Exactly. And the resilience of a community is not determined by how quickly tarps are deployed in the first 72 hours.
It's not.
It is determined by the integrity of the infrastructure in year 3, year 5, and year 10.
And the local provider is the only entity designed to exist in both phases.
The only one. They manage the acute trauma, yes, but their operational model is anchored in the chronic reality of the rebuilt environment.
Who is there after the storm matters? The transient model is built for the spectacle of the immediate aftermath, but the local model is built for the endurance of the recovery.
It is a systemic warning, really, against allowing short-term urgency to override long-term risk assessment.
That's a huge trap for consumers.
It is. When a homeowner signs a contract with a migratory workforce, they are effectively exporting the financial value of their insurance claim out of their own community while retaining 100% of the long-term liability for the work performed.
Wow, when you phrase it like that, it sounds crazy to ever do it.
Right. But when you hire local, you are keeping that capital within the regional economy and tethering the liability to a provider who is structurally equipped to actually handle it.
This changes the entire calculus of how we should approach hiring in a crisis.
It absolutely should.
Think about your own decision-making processes when you are under immense pressure, whether it is a physical disaster like a tree on your house or even a catastrophic failure in a major project at work.
Instinct is always to prioritize the fastest visible motion.
Yes, we want the quickest intervention to alleviate the anxiety of the problem right now.
But this framework demands that we elevate our criteria. We have to look past the speed of arrival and interrogate the architecture of the provider's accountability.
We have to ask the hard questions. Are they legally tethered to the outcome?
Right. Do they suffer reputational damage if they fail?
Does their profit model even allow them to fix their mistakes 12 months from now?
It requires a profound degree of cognitive discipline from the consumer.
It really does. It requires you to pause in the exact moment your brain is screaming at you to take immediate action and actually evaluate the systemic incentives of the person offering the solution.
Exactly.
Well, we've traced the entire anatomy of a disaster response today. We started in the chaos of the acute phase, recognizing how the vulnerability of the homeowner is so often exploited by those velocity-based profit models.
And we dissected the critical difference between the illusion of a rapid arrival and the actual operational reality of true follow-through.
We examined the specific mechanisms that make follow-through possible too, moving past just the abstract idea of a, quote-unquote, good contractor.
Right, to the concrete realities of jurisdictional leverage through local licensing.
We explored how reputational economies create intense social friction that naturally modifies behavior.
And how true warranty work is an actuarial certainty that simply has to be built into a local business's long-term financial planning.
And finally, we reframed the whole concept of trust. We moved it from a blind leap of faith demanded by an opportunistic salesperson to a verifiable outcome generated by overlapping systems of local accountability.
We established that the most critical metric of success isn't who pulls into your driveway first, but who is structurally obligated to be standing there 3 years later.
It is a really comprehensive blueprint for mitigating risk in high-stress environments.
It gives you the tools you need when you need them most.
It provides immense clarity. But there's a final implication here that extends beyond the moment of crisis.
Oh yes, the proactive side of this.
Right. The entire framework relies on the premise that local relationships force accountability upon the provider. Their presence in our community compels them to deliver a better product.
Yes, that's the core engine.
But let's invert that dynamic for a second. Think about this. If community presence and local relationships are the ultimate safeguard against the risks of transient, opportunistic labor, What is our responsibility as consumers and neighbors to cultivate those relationships before the pressure of a crisis forces our hand?
That is the big question. That shifts the burden of preparedness entirely back onto us.
It does. If we wait until the structural integrity of our home is compromised and our cognitive overload is at its peak, we are already operating from a massive deficit.
You're already losing the game.
Exactly. We are already susceptible to the path of least resistance, which is usually just the first truck to arrive.
The guy who happens to knock on your door first.
Right. So the ultimate defense against the vulnerability we discussed at the very beginning of this deep dive isn't just knowing how to interrogate a contractor's profit model while standing in the wreckage.
That's reactive.
The most robust defense is proactive. It's investing the time to understand the reputational economies of your own local market when the skies are clear.
Building those relationships now.
Yes. So that when the storm actually hits, you don't have to evaluate a sea of strangers in a panic. You already know exactly who has the infrastructure, the licensing, and the community presence to follow through.
From looking to Longview, we keep it clear and true. Now contractors too got something you can use. When the pipe lets go, or smoke leaves its trace, we break it down fast so you know what to face. What's the first move? What should you do? Which signs mean trouble? We'll walk you through the Subro East Texas Restoration Report. The Subro East Texas Restoration Report. Quick tips, real talk. Keep your place in line. Year round and ready. One episode at a time. Water in the hall, mow behind the wall. Fire left a mess, we cover it all. Season by season, we call out the risk. Behind the scenes with the team and the steps